know first that this session is being recorded, excuse me, and it will be available in the near future, so keep an eye out on that. So let's go into the presenters a little bit. Dr. Courtney Lepore has been a school leader for over 15 years at the elementary level. Dr. Lepore has a passion for creating a structured learning environment with high expectations for both teachers and students. Dr. Lepore truly believes all teachers have the power to impact meaningful changes in the achievement of their students. Dr. Lepore began implementing the science of reading in her school through intense teacher professional development 8 years ago. This work has continued through the past academic year. Achieving great reading results has been a journey involving professional learning and empowering teachers. Dr. Lepore truly believes that when teachers have the knowledge, guidance, and power to implement a meaningful change in the classroom, a rise in student achievement will follow. Next, we have Heather Lilly. Mrs. Heather Lilly has been a primary elementary school teacher since 2006, teaching kindergarten, first, and second grades. During this time, she served as a data and grade level team leader, helping teachers gather and analyze student learning data and implement instruction and intervention to consistently ensure that more than 90% of students achieve their literacy goals. Mrs. Lilly has been trained in letters and enhanced core reading instruction. This past fall, she co-led a literacy initiative to train and implement ECRI, leading to Bangor Area School District's highest mid-year literacy results in the history. Mrs. Lilly enjoys working with her school's literacy team to research and implement effective practices to ensure that all kids can read by the time they leave second grade. Next, we have Lisa Dente. Did I say that right, Lisa? Okay. She has completed 16 years of service in education in the Bangor Area School District. She began her career as a special education teacher servicing students with a wide range of disabilities. After obtaining a master's degree in reading and a reading specialist certificate in December 2007, she was able to begin her role as a reading specialist in the fall of 2008 at a 5th and 6th grade building. While in that role, she served as the reading curriculum leader, facilitated the leadership team of the building, and was an active member of the child study team. For the past school year, she continued in her role as a reading specialist, but at the K-2 building in her school. She has been afforded the opportunity to attend many professional development sessions in the area of reading, and which have specifically expanded her knowledge in the areas of phonemic awareness, phonics, and fluency in her most recent position. She considers herself a lifelong learner and strives to help others learn through her experiences. And then we have, last but not least, Michelle Posinger. She is in her 26th year of teaching in the Bangor School District. She began her career as a 5th grade teacher for 12 years until she transitioned to the role of academic coach. Her primary role is supporting literacy and mathematics instruction in grades K through 4. She is also a certified letters trainer for her district. So without further ado, I will let you ladies take over. And I would just ask you to unmute yourselves.
Okay, hi, welcome everyone. This is Dr. Lepore, and I'm going to start us off today. So we got to hear a little bit about our team, and you'll hear throughout this presentation that really it was a team effort over a long period of time to really turn the tide in terms of our reading results. So these are a few members of our team, but believe me that there are many more that have been necessary to achieve these results. So this is kind of what we would like you to consider as we considered when we went through this process. So, 8 years ago, we really took the opportunity to focus on literacy instruction and continue to do so today. And the reason why is very much linked to this quote. So if a child memorizes 10 words, the child can only read 10 words. But if the child learns the sounds of 10 letters, the child will be able to read 353 sound words, 4,324 sound words, and 21,655 sound words. We know that if we take the time to teach the principles behind reading, so the phonological and phonic skills, we know that we'll be able to reach a higher level of success for our students. So over the course of the last 8 years, that has been our primary focus, and we're proud of the results that we've been able to get for our students. Michelle.
Well, our literacy journey began 8 years ago, as Dr. Lepore stated, but I want to point out that it wasn't that we weren't doing anything prior to those 8 years. And we had an intervention block and we were attempting to deliver programs to kids, but there was definitely a need shown from that. We were not getting the results. We were lucky if mid-year, if we hit maybe 70%, and then by end of year, we would drop back down. So this literacy initiative came to the forefront as something that was necessary. The process when it began in kindergarten, and the first year they started in December. And each year then, we would roll into a different grade level. The support that the grade levels received did not cut off at the end of that year. So we had kindergarten begin, and then as we added first grade, they began having the initial trainings, but kindergarten continued with trainings, and we continued on up through fourth grade. Now, initially, the Literacy Initiative produced results that indicated a significant increase in the skills, and I'll show you that on the next slide in a minute. But the results also indicated that we needed to improve the consistency and systematic nature of our core instruction to get us to the maximum number of students, to get us to that 90 to 95% of students being core. Our literacy data, as you can see, is based on Dibble's Next or Dibble's Acadians. We're reporting the composite score proficiency levels. And you can see through the years of implementation, our end of year results are highlighted in blue. So the first year in kindergarten, when we achieved 93%, it began halfway through the year. And as you go through the years, you can see that there's the increase in the percentage of students that we were able to have proficient. And as you track the cohort, you can see that we ended at 78 in first grade one year. The next year, those students started at 78% proficient. So our teachers were really seeing good results, and they were very pleased because they were saying things like, I've never had kids come in this high before. I'm getting to places that I've not had to go before because we're getting further in our content. Our last year, this past year, 2019 and 20, we had our mid-year results, and we're going to be talking to you about what we've implemented in order to get that nice jump in those results. Because it really indicated as we went through that we were finding our core needed to meet the needs of 80% of our kids, and it wasn't.
So just to give you an idea of all that it took to have these instructional changes in the classroom. So this began, again, many years ago, and that began with our partnership with Step-by-Step Learning at the time, and they provided traditional professional development based on the science of reading, along with coaching and modeling for all staff members, some connect to the classroom professional development, so what does that theory mean to classroom instruction, and then they trained all of the leaders in our district in terms of the science of reading as well. And then we partnered with our IU, which is IU 20, and provided a variety of letters modules to all teachers teaching K through 4 students. And then you can see there the number of professional developments. And then we also partnered with our daycare centers in the area and provided them with the letters module for early childhood educators, which our kindergarten teachers participated in with them. So we tried to foster that partnership to help the science of reading being implemented in those earlier programs. And then we continued looking to figure out how we can continue to increase the professional knowledge of our staff. And we formed a very strong partnership with Patan. We've participated in the Beyond the Dyslexia pilot, the Enhanced Core Reading Professional Development Series, both last year and this very past year. And then we're also a member of the Dyslexia pilot expansion. And then we also sent our instructional coach, Mrs. Possinger, to become a letters trainer so that we could have somebody right here on site that can be working with teachers, both new and returning, to build their professional knowledge. And then a big change for our district was, again, we really wanted that literacy focus for our elementary students. So we had the ability to restructure our district to create a K through 2 elementary school that would allow all Bangor students to be in in the building together, have all of the teachers in the building together so that all of our professional development can be differentiated, our instructional practices can be differentiated, and all arrows can be pointed to making sure that every child leaves second grade on grade level. So then our philosophy base was grounded, these quotes really kind of help you understand our philosophy base. So the first belief that we hold very strong is that explicit and systematic phonics instruction is good for all, better for some, and necessary for a few. So we make sure that in every single tier of instruction, that explicit and systematic phonics instruction is provided to all students. And then another belief that grounds our practices is that when performance is measured, performance improves. When performance is reported, the rate of improvement accelerates. So we have a lot of shared data that we share with the staff regularly. So we share our kids and we share our data too. So gone are the days where it might be your kids and you house their data, you know their data, but the rest of your team doesn't. We know exactly, all grade level teachers know exactly how each classroom is scoring and how each student is performing and reaching their goals. And our last philosophy base is that do not wait for kids to fail to provide them the sound instruction based upon the science of reading. So by the time we get to a point where we may be considering special education for a student, we've provided all of the interventions that previously, say, prior to this process, students had to wait to get. So now they get them as soon as their data indicates a need. And much of those strategies are already embedded in core instruction, which you'll see as we talk more about ECRI. Heather.
So as a result, all of this, our teachers in our district, and not just our classroom teachers, but our reading specialists and our paraprofessionals could pass a test, a phonics test, with flying colors. So we have it listed here, and we'll make this presentation available to you so that you also can take this test. It's kind of eye-opening when you do it at first and you think you know a lot about phonics, and then you take the test and you're like, wow, there really is a lot to know in the science of reading, especially in the area of phonological awareness and phonics. So I would challenge you to take that test and note what your weaknesses are, and to think about the staff that you have in your schools and what would they score on this test. So we're going to show you what we did with ECRI, and while ECRI is an amazing set of routines, you really need to have your staff knowledgeable in the science of reading, especially in the area of phonics. And then another question to ask is, what professional development do you need to provide to enhance the staff's understanding of the science of reading? When you think about that professional development, you don't always want to show them a new program. You want to think about their professional knowledge and really teach them. And then we have, when teachers know better, they do better. I can think back to my beginning days as a kindergarten teacher and how awful I feel today with the instruction that I was giving them compared to what our kindergarten students now know and now can do.
So here you'll see the preventative model of instruction. As you take a look at this model, you'll notice all three tiers are listed there. We've got our core instruction, small group instruction, and our individual instruction, which is a little bit more specific to 1 to 3 students, all three tiers represented, and the amount of time that the children spend in each of those tiers. And as you take a look at this model, I want you to ask yourself this first question. Are 80% or greater of your students achieving grade level success from core instructional practices? So think about your core instruction and the results that you're getting from your students. Our district, when we asked ourselves this question, we struggled to answer yes consistently to that question. Therefore, we knew that we really had to examine that core instructional time, knowing that it's 90 to 120 minutes. We needed to maximize every single minute that the children were in that classroom. We needed to figure out how we could make sure that the students were actively engaged for all of those minutes, and that our instructional practices aligned to the science of reading and was effective so that they could make growth. The next question I want you to ponder is, Are all students receiving targeted, skill-specific intervention to meet their individual learning needs? So thinking about small group interventions, are they targeted? Are they flexible? Are they consistent, skill-focused, and are they explicit? So think about how you would answer that question. And when we sat back and thought about that question, we really felt strongly that this was a strength for us. We had a really strong system in place for intervention for our students, an hour consistently across the grade level daily, so that we could share students and make it targeted and flexible. But we knew that we needed to make sure that if we wanted to get 90% or greater of students to reach core level, we needed to go back to the core and really find how we could improve this instruction and maximize this time for our students.
So a question that we definitely had to ask ourselves was, is it the fish or is it the water? So we had been previously using a program, Journeys 2014, which is a fine program. I can remember looking through it and doing my lesson plans and thinking, whoa, there is a lot of stuff here. What is most important for my students? The more I learned about the science of reading, the more I knew that I needed to focus a lot on phonics and phonological awareness. And while they were parts of the program, it wasn't as explicit as it needed to be. And then working with the other teachers in my grade level, it was kind of like we were all picking the pieces of the program that we enjoyed. So if you really loved comprehension, you were focusing a lot on the anchor story. If you were more on the side of phonics, you were trying to do that, but spending so much time trying to prepare materials that a lot of times you couldn't really focus in on the skills that you wanted the students to learn. So we asked ourselves, what can we do better? So intervention instruction, which we knew we had a solid plan for going into our core instruction. Just a quote from the awesome Anita Archer, you can't intervene your way out of a core problem, and there's no comprehension strategy powerful enough to compensate for the fact that you can't read the words. So we had this great intervention structure set up. We had everyone working towards the same goal, but we just knew if we didn't have our 80% of students at that core level, we knew there had to be something in our core that we could just do a little bit better.
So two of the areas that we identified that were weak in Journeys was the phonological instruction. We knew that it needed to be more robust, and the explicit phonics instruction during the core. So for phonological instruction, we utilized, and we started this about 3 years ago, we utilized the Michael Heggerty phonemic awareness curriculum. And so we did provide you a link if you're unfamiliar with this. There's sample lessons on his website, but it is a quick way, and we'll show you a bit of that, to really provide phonological instruction to kids and make sure that they're really working that phonological process to the point of automaticity. And then when we finish that program in second grade, we don't stop that type of instruction. We utilize David Kilpatrick's Equipped for Reading Success 1-minute activities. So we do more than 1 minute. We pair them so that they can get more drill and practice in that area and keep that processor really nice and strong, because we know that the reading research says that when that processor is strong, they have the skills that are necessary to begin to unitize words. And then we also know that Journeys was weak in terms of explicitly teaching the phonics skills. So not to say that it doesn't have phonics skills, because it does, but the way that it was teaching them doesn't have the things that we knew really produced sound results for kids. So we implemented letters knowledge to supplement the Journeys reading program, but what we heard from our teachers was to take that knowledge and make Journeys work well. It was an ungodly amount of planning and preparation, and to make sure that everybody across 9 classrooms was doing that consistently was a challenge that we hadn't yet mastered. So we knew we needed to do something else. So we found ECRI. So last year, prior to this academic year, we had the opportunity for 2 of our teachers, Mrs. Lilly being one of them, to participate in the ECRI training and begin piloting these routines in their classrooms. And as an administrator, I know that when the best of the best come to me and say, I can't teach reading without this. So even if you tell me that we can't use it, I'm using it anyway. I knew that we needed to make sure that this resource got into the hands of all of our K through 2 teachers. So that's where we had that continued professional development. We sent teams of teachers to be trained at Patam by both Carol Disson, and we also utilized our teachers who piloted the program to do trainings here on site and to do coaching as well to get those practices out into classrooms. And then we continued with professional development through the Beyond the Dyslexia pilot to make sure that we continued to reinforce and grow our teacher knowledge of evidence-aligned reading instruction. We participated with a different team of teachers in the building in the dyslexia pilot expansion. And then we continued with instructional modeling and coaching by our K through 4 literacy coach, who is also a letters trainer. And then we facilitated PLCs in our after school meetings, which included peer coaching. So we did a lot of layers of support to make sure that we could make sure that we were providing better instruction in those 2 above areas. And then looking at what we were looking for in terms of what was the measuring stick to know that ECRI kind of fit all the things that we knew that sound reading instruction needed to be. We knew that it needed to be explicit, systematic, and multisensory. And when you look at ECRI, it hits and checks all of those boxes. So we knew that we had found something that the research says is really sound principles in terms of reading instruction. Heather.
So for those of you that are not experienced with ECRI, which stands for Enhanced Core Reading Instruction, it is just a set of routines that takes the place of, well, not so much takes the place, but is just carried out through all of your instruction throughout the day. So they're very systematic, very explicit. And journeys will cover phonological awareness, phonics. There's also routines for vocabulary and comprehension. The routines are so specific and so consistent across our classrooms that if you were to walk down the first grade hallway, you can almost hear in unison the delivery of instruction. So our reading specialists, paraprofessionals, and classroom teachers were all trained in these routines so that we could share our kids so that they could get up and go to 3 different intervention sessions of 20 minutes during our 1-hour intervention block. But also if you had some push-in support of a paraprofessional or reading teacher during your small group. Also using these routines and ECRI for a double dip if the kids really needed it. So this was our daily structure of the phonics and phonological awareness. We would start our day with our Heggerty lesson, and it was very fast-paced, very fun for the kids. They really enjoyed that. And then we would move into what's listed on our triangle here. So there was a sound spelling introduction, sound spelling card, and practice of things that were pre-taught or that they needed coming in the following lessons. There was a letter name practice in kindergarten and kind of moved away from that within first grade. Then your sound spelling review, which was really an aha moment for myself and the other teacher that was initially trained in ECRI. And we thought, why did we not think of this sooner? We knew that they needed review of these things. Why this routine is so simple, why didn't we think of it? And then there went into blending practice. So wherever the majority of your students in your class were, that is where you practice, whether it was continuous blending, moving into sound by sound, spelling focused, or into those really tricky multisyllabic words. And then into regular reading. And then the most important, I feel, of the entire ECRI program is your connect to text with your decodable text. So since we used Journeys 2014, we would continue to use those decodable texts. So this just replaced the section in Journeys of phonics using the same scope and sequence, using the same phonics skills and phonological skills, just beefed up and right there for you. So it was amazing that my lesson plans for phonics were literally teach ECRI, lesson 20, day 1, and everything was there for me. And I didn't really have to think about all of that. And then the last piece is the dictation or the encoding. So when we first started this, a lot of questions that we received were, what about our higher kids? What about our kids who are already proficient with reading these kinds of words? And we would say, think about their writing. I saw amazing things. I can think of a boy in my class who is super high achieving in his reading, came in reading, 80 words per minute on the dibbles, and his writing just wasn't as strong. So he was able to form the sentences, but the spelling and the phonics that I was seeing was not quite in line with what he was reading. He called them the secrets, loved the secrets of the sound spelling cards, and just teaching him those in that small way and him referring to them on the front of the classroom each day really made him jump up in his scores as well. Just to mention, though, that teacher knowledge in the science of reading is absolutely necessary. So although you have your sound spelling cards there and you have the words right there, you really need, as the teacher, to understand and know what that phonics skill is. We even took our sound spelling cards and on the back put a label of the phonics rules just for teachers, because it is a lot. It's overwhelming to memorize everything. But if you have it right there and able to quickly read through that before you present it to the kids, it really makes a difference. So this is just what our Tier 1 reading block looked like. So we were allotted 90 minutes per day. And this is coming right from our ECRI training. The foundational skills practice, which was the triangle that I just showed, was about 15 minutes. So it was a lot longer in the beginning and a little troublesome for our teachers to learn at first, but as they practiced, we got really quick with it. And then we would spend about 30 minutes with vocabulary and comprehension, and then 15 minutes of fluency practice using the decodable reader or what was appropriate for the children at that time. We also did small group instruction for 30 minutes. So what text you would use would depend on the child. So we would use the decodable text for the majority of our class. And if there were children who were reading above level and could prove to us that they were fluent in that decodable text, we would then pick out the leveled readers from Journeys or some kind of passage that had more multisyllabic words in it using the phonics skill. And then we would have them read that to us 1 or 2 times per week, the decodable text, just to make sure that they were still fluent. Kids kind of moved in and out of those groups depending on what the skill was. As the skills got harder, more kids stayed in the decodable text a little bit more than they did in the beginning. And then the independent work that the students would do all kind of tied back to ECRI, whether it be some kind of phonics, word sort, some kind of writing prompt to go along with what they were learning. But those 90 minutes, we did not waste one time. So our students would come in and eat their breakfast. And as they were cleaning up their breakfast, we were starting our Heggerty routine. As our Heggerty routine ended, we were moving right into ECRI. So we really tried to get every single minute that we had with the kids doing something to better their reading skills. So we talked about Heggerty, and if you're not familiar with it, it's a phonological program. So a few years ago, we purchased this for all of our classroom teachers, and I would say not until we brought our 2 elementary schools together did we really ensure that there was fidelity with this program, and I think that our scores reflect that a lot this year. So making sure that that was a non-negotiable, that every classroom was doing all of the pieces of the phonological program every day. So they're very robust, very quick skill drills, very fun, going from the simplest type of phonological awareness to the most complex. So at Bangor, we use the kindergarten and primary curriculum. Kindergarten, obviously using kindergarten. The primary curriculum is delivered from week 1 in 1st grade all the way till the end of the program. And then in 2nd grade, they start around week 20 and sort of review those skills. And as they finish that program, we go into Kilpatrick's 1-minute skill drills. However, we do use those in 1st grade too, anywhere we can fill in some of the time, whether we're waiting to go to lunch or coming back from recess, we can just quick pull a 1-minute skill drill, Or for our more advanced phonological kids, I tended to use those a lot as a warm-up in my small group. And then this instruction was so, so important that even when we had our closure in March, we knew that we could not give up on it. So we had 2 teachers tape a lesson daily. And as a mom of one of these kids, I can tell you this was the part that she did not want to stop. She always wanted to do her Heggerty lesson. So we just have a quick, we can just play a couple seconds, Dr. Lepore. You want to, yeah, move it towards the middle.
Rhyme with them? How about slump or pump? Think, wink. Say the 2 words. Think, wink. Can you think of 2 words that rhyme?
So it's a little difficult to hear, but Mrs. Stewart was one of our best teachers who could deliver this Heggerty program really quickly. So she would do that daily for our students.
Or blend. That sounds good. All right, now I'm going to give you 3 words. I want you to tell me those 3 words back and then identify the blend. Now remember, the blend has 2 sounds and they're going to be in the beginning. Okay, here we go. Fly, flag, flip. Say them. Fly, flag, flip. What's my blend? Flip. Good job. Clap, clam, close. Say the words. Clap, clam, close. What's my blend? Fla. Good. Prize, print, pray. Say the 3 words. Prize, print, pray. What's my blend? Pr, which is PR. Good work. Now I'm just going to say the words and I want you to tell me just the blend. Ready? Step, stare, steam. What's my blend? St. Snail, snack, snow. Sn. Block, blue, blow. Bl. Crib, cry, cream. Cr. Crab, oh, I'm sorry, I said the wrong words. Scab, scar, scoot. What's my blend? Sk. Grip, gray, grow. Gr, gr. Good work. Okay, now I'm going to tell you sounds. You're going to scoop those sounds together and make them into a word. Ready? Here we go. Y, l. Yell. Y, k. Yak. Y, yawn. Yellow. Yellow. That's one of my favorite colors. How about you? Yeah. Yard. Yard. Yes. Yes. Yeah. Ooh, what's that one? Let's try that one again. Yeah. Or your.
So Heggerty is really user-friendly and great. It gives you directions on what kind of hand motions to use, which was great when we were trying to build consistency with our 9 classrooms within each grade level, so that if students were with me for a small group and I was doing that hand motion for segmenting, they could go over to Mrs. Dente for their reading intervention, and she would be using those same kind of hand motions. We also included another link for sample lessons in case you weren't familiar with Heggerty and wanted to check it out. So not only did ECRI provide us with routines for phonological awareness and phonics, there were also comprehension and vocabulary instructional routines, which again really made sure that we had consistent language and consistent structure so that we could really share our students with no problem. So there were routines for partner and whole group instruction to ensure 100% engagement from all learners. So I can remember back to really struggling with calling on one student in my kindergarten class, and they would, go on to a 15-minute story about what happened last night. This really gave us a clear routine and structure so that students still had time to talk to each other, but that I could go around and listen and I can say, oh, wow, Michael said, and kind of say what he said so that it wasn't always just a free-for-all in my classroom. Your instruction with these routines, though, must be very planned and thoughtful. ECRI gave us the structure for how to set up our partnerships. So you would take your class list, maybe ranking them with their DIBEL scores from highest to lowest, split it in half, and kind of shift them together so that you didn't have your most struggling students always working with your most struggling student. It gave more of a fair partnership. And so the main focus for our comprehension routines was being able to retell a text, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, and how important that was before that we could ever work on more complex comprehension strategies. Because if you can't retell a text or a student can't retell it, there is no point in working on something so much harder. So our next slide is our retell structures. So every classroom has these, and we would use them to always retell. So the narrative was using the seal, and it would tell the main characters, the setting, the first, the next, and the last. And I had kids in my class who could do this no problem. And I would say the majority of kids could read their stories, and by the end of, well, by March, before our closure, they could say, the main characters are blah, blah, blah. The setting is first, and really get through a whole retell without any prompts from me as the teacher. And then our nonfiction retell structure using our sunflower, so listing out some of the details that the kids read, and then being able to then pull the main idea from that. So we would use this with all of the texts that we would read, whether it was a decodable reader during small group, read aloud during my comprehension lessons, at any time throughout the day that we needed to retell something. And then for vocabulary, we would choose our tier 2 words. We would plan a student-friendly definition that could be displayed within our classroom. You would then illustrate that word in some way, show some non-examples, and then just like Anita Archer, there was lots of repetition of the word. So constantly re-saying that word, having the students say it, really seemed to help them get a grasp of that so that you could hear that language coming out in other parts of the day. And then a consistent review of previously taught words, and the use of blue and yellow partners to discuss and respond. So ECRI even gave us a structure to set up the students for their partnerships. So like I was saying earlier, you would take your class list, split it in half, so that if you had 30 students in your class, the highest student of student 1 and student 15 would be working together. You would make your student 1 a blue partner and your student 15 the yellow partner, and you would plan your questions for them. So you knew you needed to get a little bit more advanced for your blue partners, so you could, in your read alouds, or if you're discussing the vocabulary, write it on a blue Post-it note so that you knew, okay, this is a blue partner question. You're going to tell your yellow partner the answer to this question. Or, you know, if you needed something a little simplified for your yellow partner, you could have that planned out on a yellow Post-it note so that you could say, okay, this is a yellow partner question. You're going to talk to your blue partner all about this. And it really gave a structure so that you knew every child was participating and there was 100% engagement.
So another benefit that we've experienced is a streamlining of language across the tiers of instruction. So especially in my position as a reading specialist, I was able to go in and out of almost every single classroom in the building and take children to my room in small group from every classroom in the building, and the language was the same across all tiers. And this was a huge benefit because the kids knew what to expect. It was predictable, and then they could focus on the task at hand rather than the vehicle that we were trying to present it to them that day. It was the same every day. So as you can see, the 4 parts of a clear signal was part of our ECRI training. The focus was whatever we were pointing to, touching next to, so the kids knew where to focus their attention to. Then we gave a cue. We would ask name or sound or word and so on, so that the children knew what we were asking of them. Then one that I find really interesting, and which might be a little bit different than what you think of when you hear think time. In this case, think time was often 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds, depending on what you were asking or your group, but keeping that think time consistent. So it became kind of like a metronome in the classroom of they knew how much time they had to think before they had to respond, because what we wanted to do was build automaticity. So we knew if they could do the skill in 2 to 3 seconds, they had it mastered. As swift as that think time was, our error correction rate was also that swift. So if an error was made, whole group, we would quickly, explicitly fix, teach that error, fix that mistake. We wouldn't ask for hands to be raised or call on 10 different children to try to keep guessing what the right answer was. As the teacher, we corrected that error swiftly, and then we moved back to spaces and continued forward. So it was 100% active engagement from the children. And if we heard a mistake, we simply just corrected it. We didn't call attention to it. We fixed it, we went backwards to back up, and then went forward again until we could keep moving on until we were to the end of the routine. The last part of that was the signal, the tap, the slide, or the swoop when we wanted the students to respond. So if we wanted all the students to respond together, which you're thinking probably, wow, that's really challenging to have 25 students respond together, especially if that, they're at all different levels. It is possible. And that is part of kind of the training that goes along with this for the teacher and the students. If they're not all responding together, we assume that it's not automatic and we need to error correct and go back. And we really train them to respond on that signal. So all four parts of those are really important. And they were so important that we decided to pick a monthly signal focus for teachers. So that in the beginning, we implemented it. We kind of, we did our trainings in the beginning of the year and we dove right in, and everyone, even if they felt uncomfortable, tried it. And we said, we're going to fine tune this as we move through the year. So with that monthly signal focus, teachers were asked to videotape a lesson. This became, normal practice for us. At first, it was really foreign and uncomfortable, but it became really important to creating the fidelity and accountability that we wanted, because we knew that if we weren't doing it consistently, we weren't going to see the results that we wanted. So we first started by reviewing our own videos by ourselves using the implementation checklist that you can see on the screen. It includes all parts of the routine and the parts of the signals. So then we moved to peer evaluation. So using professional development time, we would review each other's videos and give each other feedback and complete the checklist. We were then moved to blue and yellow staff partners, where we were partnered up with a different staff member, someone maybe that worked in a different grade level, and we peer reviewed that as well. In addition to all of that, we did implementation walkthroughs by different members of the staff for feedback and professional development. So we were looking for trends. We weren't looking for, individual teachers to kind of pull in and say, hey, you're not doing this right. We were really looking for trends throughout grade levels. And, one specifically that we noticed was the multisyllabic routine, specifically in second grade. Because they were jumping into it before first grade would, and it was something that was a little bit challenging for everybody. So we really took that trend and we brought it back, and we created some mini professional development around that. We found some staff members that were willing to videotape a lesson of themselves doing it if we felt that they were doing it the most consistently and with the most fidelity, and then we presented that to the staff and then had them practice. So that was really beneficial. Again, it gave us that consistent language in core, but not just in core, in small group reading, intervention, and even in other content areas. We saw these, the 4 parts of a clear signal coming out in math class, in science and social studies. They became tools that the kids really, it was predictable, they understood what was expected, and the teachers started incorporating it in everything that they did.
Okay, so then from my seat, from the administrative role, when we were looking at this implementation over time, we knew that we needed it to be strategic and, steadfast. So we couldn't move on to the next flashy initiative. So we can't stop focusing on reading until we get exactly to where we need to be. So that took a focus on looking at schedules, how we encourage professional dialogue, how we give teachers feedback, how we communicate with our stakeholders, how we encourage ownership of all students by our entire staff, and how we encourage problem solving throughout the building. So we'll share a little bit about how we kind of tackled all of those areas to make sure that our implementation was as sound as possible. So the very first thing, it's a rather large building, so we have 9 sections of every grade level, K through 2. So this is just a snippet of the schedule, but you can see how we've stacked so that first grade and kindergarten can support each other during ELA if they need to share students, how intervention times are stacked, how special education is available to support in their grade levels. And so you can see how the schedule is very, very purposeful. And how, as Mrs. Lilly said, how really there isn't a lot of wasted time. So we have very few, kids stay in their classrooms, so we don't need to buffer a ton of instructional time unless they're actually walking someplace. So we really don't. And you can see that in the schedule. Lisa.
So one thing that you would notice if you were walking in our hallways and in our building and in our meetings is professional dialogue that takes place on a regular basis. This is a common practice in our building. We have time specifically dedicated to professional development to increase teacher knowledge of evidence-aligned instruction. We are absolutely fortunate to have our partnership with Patan for additional professional development for teacher teams. And then those teacher teams that attend the training such as ECRI and the dyslexia pilot expansion, then come back and share their knowledge with the rest of the staff. We have after school meetings in our contracted time, and those meetings are not used for nuts and bolts types of items. Things that can be sent in an email are sent in an email so that our time together is used for us to collaborate with each other and take that mini professional development during that time and really practice it and collaborate with each other so that we can improve our instructional practices. We are absolutely fortunate enough in our district to have an instructional coach. That's Michelle Passinger, who's on today. And she is just a wealth of knowledge. And she is required to come into our classrooms throughout the year, but you would find that people just are, lining up to get her to come into our classroom. Her schedule fills very quickly. She is very popular because she comes in with a different set of eyes. Everyone is accepting of her in our classrooms because we know that she's got that outside vantage point of looking in and saying, hey, did you ever think about this? Did you think about that? Did you notice this? And she really offers a perspective that sometimes when you're knee deep in up there instructing the students and you're multitasking as you're teaching, she offers that viewpoint to help you improve your instruction so that the students can really benefit. So it is a huge benefit. After she leaves your classroom, she is in touch with you that day to kind of offer her perspective and any help that she can. We also offer peer coaching. Something else that we implemented just this past year was office hours for our reading specialists. I'm one of 3 in our building. We're lucky in that way as well. And we make ourselves available specific times and all times. It's an open door policy, but this gave us a specific structure of saying, hey, I'm available from this time to this time on this day. Come in, ask any questions you have about kids, about instruction, and they really did. They utilized that time. It was really exciting when a teacher knocked on my door, and it was my office hours, and she came in and she asked a couple different questions, and if we don't know the answers, after troubleshooting together, we go to Dr. Lepore or to another teacher or to Mrs. Passinger for answers. So that professional dialogue, just like we want children to talk to each other, to learn from each other, our structure of our day and our meetings are really set up to allow for that professional dialogue, because without it, we would probably just be stuck in that tunnel vision of what we're doing in our own classroom and not realize that we all have wonderful things to share with each other and that we can learn from each other.
And then we also conducted very strategic instructional walkthroughs. And again, this is more to get a pulse of the building and where people are in terms of their implementation skills. So these aren't an evaluation like your informal or your formal evaluation. This really was for us to get a sense of trends. So our administrative team, from our superintendents on down to myself, would be out in classrooms and walking together. I think the first time very early in the year when we were learning ECRI that our superintendent showed up in classrooms, I think my teachers almost had a heart attack, but they got used to the fact that, you know, central administrators were going to be out and looking specifically at reading instruction. And then we also utilized our instructional coach, again, to gather those trends. Her specific conversations with teachers are held to a high level of confidentiality. However, if there's kind of a global trend, so say in first grade, you know, they're having difficulty moving kids through the blending continuum, she would report that trend to me so that then I could allot some time to provide some professional development in that area. Or reach out to teams and say, hey, I think this is something that we need to talk about. And then literacy leadership team. So we have a team of teachers. Some of the members that are here with me today are on that team, where we really take a distributive approach in terms of the leadership throughout the building. So we have the literacy leader team. We also have data leaders, 2 data leaders in every grade level that help teachers sift through their data and make sure their instructional groups are appropriate. We have team leaders that help with the curriculum and make sure that the curriculum is being implemented with fidelity. So a variety of people really help make sure that all of this is happening simultaneously, because it's not a job that you can do alone. Heather.
So we all know that communication is always the biggest piece to any kind of initiative that you are starting. So we have very clear communication with not only our teachers, but our paraprofessionals regarding the goals and strategies. So we all want to be moving towards that same goal. If our paraprofessionals don't know that goal, then obviously they're not going to do their best job in implementing what we need them to. So we make sure that we can include them in that as well. And we always identify specific target areas for improvement. So like Dr. Lepore said, in first grade, we had a large majority of kids stuck on, you know, blending, sound by sound blending, and they needed to move into some of the more complex ways to blending in hopes that they could then unitize and read whole words. So we had that specific goal this year where we were all looking at the kids and making sure that our instruction changed so that we could get as many kids to that goal as possible. So we're always looking for targeted areas. And by keeping good communication, we can make sure that all teachers in every classroom are doing the most they can. So we also have partnerships with the experts in the field to gain insight, whether it be with Patan, step-by-step learning, with Carol Disson through ECRI, and with each other, honestly, so that we can always continue to find something to improve. One of the biggest things I think we did this year was our communication with parents, because ECRI seems different than the way that they learn to read. So when you're saying to them, they need to segment and blend their phonemes, they need to, you know, do this phonics skill, and they kind of don't understand that, you need to explain that to them a little bit. So we would send home a weekly curricular newsletter that we would put a snapshot of what we were doing, but also sometimes explaining it. Lots of parents don't know what the term phonological awareness means. So having a quick definition in your newsletter, or an example of an activity that they can do with their kids at home really seemed to help. And so the more that we could explain and show parents that this is the science of reading and this is well backed by research, the more they could see the improvement in their child as well. And then the communication with our school board. So back in March, we had our school board members come in and actually walk through a few classrooms and see ECRI. And they were just astonished by 100% of your kids doing exactly what they needed to do. And I can remember them pulling a few students from my classroom to read to them, and they just were amazed that a first grader could read so well. So that was pretty cool.
So when you're thinking about student ownership in the building, it is really all hands on deck, from the school nurse to the gym teacher to classroom teachers to support staff and reading specialists and administration, everyone is involved. Everyone knows the goal of getting our children to 90% or better core by the time they leave our building, and everyone is committed to team problem solving to support this goal and get every child to that point. It's absolutely amazing to see. Everyone kind of jumps in and helps where they can, and if they have time in their schedule, they're in to support. They're meeting with kids one-on-one. If we know we have a child that we need to boost them up a little bit, we'll have them read to a special area teacher at a special point in the day to show off their reading. So we really try to celebrate their success together. So everyone is invested in this goal. Another way that we do this is through shared data. Again, Dr. Lepore mentioned this earlier. We come to the table all together, and it's not my class versus your class, or we're not saying, oh, how are your students doing? Because they are truly all of our children, all of our students. They see so many of us. We share them during core time if we need to. We share them during small group time and intervention time, and we keep those groups flexible based on their needs. It's a great system that we have in place, the way the schedule is designed, so that we are able to do that. Mrs. Passinger is going to talk to you a little bit about our data analysis and instructional planning.
All teachers participate in data analysis and instructional planning sessions, particularly after benchmarking. But what we found is, in order for groups to be fluid, there's regular data review sessions that happen. When we do data analysis and instructional planning sessions, all teachers, as they've stated, see each other's data. When I actually build and set up systems at the beginning of the year, and the teacher has, we use MClass, the teacher has access to not only their class in MClass, but all of the classes in their grade level. Because sometimes they see other students for intervention, and that data of progress monitoring would show them whether or not students are making progress. They need the informed decision-making as well, so they have the ability to see each other's data. On top of that, we also have data review, grade level meetings twice a month involving all teachers as well. In reviewing that type of data, sometimes they bump students around for their intervention time. And because those groups are fluid, we need the regular time in order to be able to examine and do that. We don't want students sitting stagnant in groups because we don't have the opportunity to know their data or the time to move them in a way that's logical. We have monthly after school meetings that are used for team problem solving and instructional grouping adjustments as well. After we're talking data and we're talking about kids an awful lot, we also still do have child study, where we set specific goals for students that we are monitoring. We may be concerned about their growth. We specifically examine what types of things we are doing with them and make a plan to try to adjust those things and add additional supports in for students. And then we set those goals and reconvene those meetings in order to be able to see whether or not children are progressing in the right direction. Instructional coaching happens. There's two types of instructional, I'll say three types of instructional coaching. There's monthly instructional coaching sessions that are required for all teachers. In the beginning of the year, it was, please make sure you schedule with Michelle for her to come in and see Heggerty. And I'm looking for fidelity of implementation of Heggerty. I'm looking for any troubling spots teachers might have, any questions that they might have about how they're doing specific things. There's scheduled teacher sessions that they can come and schedule with me for things that they want specific to their instructional coaching. But there's another type of instructional coaching I do that's called kid coaching. Kid coaching oftentimes comes out of those data analysis meetings where we're discussing a student we're concerned about. We believe we're doing all of the right interventions. Student still isn't making progress. So I go and I follow the student through their intervention or through their day and see it from their perspective. A lot of times, some of our most needy kids see more than one person, and we want to see what that looks like for the student. Do we need to combine and have them see one person because that movement is difficult for them? Are they using slightly different language that could be confusing to the student? I get to see that vantage point and then convey that back to the teachers. We also have many professional development sessions that are ongoing. Some are directed through walkthroughs and coaching sessions. Some are prompted by teachers who are saying, we need help, we're unsure of this. And we also adapt schedules to reflect the needs of students. If the support is equal in the beginning of the year, but by the end of by a certain data review, we find that we need more support in first grade. So they'll shift schedules in order to put the support where it is needed most. It stays fluid because if the data shows that that is no longer a need and there's a need somewhere else, the schedule can change for that too.
Thank you. So this year we partnered with PBS and they came in, they wanted to showcase what was happening here in the building in terms of reading. So this special, it's just a quick one, but it really will show you what ECRI looks like, and it'll show you what the classroom instruction looks like, and it'll show you from the superintendent's perspective on down how this change process occurred.
The card is Eagle card. The sound is E sound.
Heather Lilly is working on something relatively new in her class.
It's a shift for a lot of teachers doing different things than they have typically done, even for myself being a teacher for many years. Word. Word. Word.
She's a first grade teacher at 5 Points Elementary in Bangor. The school district has been focusing on literacy over the past several years.
We just sort of doubled down on academics and made academics a priority for the district. And everything sort of hinges on elementary reading to get all of that kicked off.
Word. Good job.
The district launched an initiative in 2013 to help improve reading levels for students from kindergarten to 3rd grade.
If a student cannot read, it makes the rest of their educational career vastly more difficult. So we know that it's really important. So we take the time to make sure that we dedicate the time and energy that we know we need to get them to grade level as quickly as possible.
In June of 2012, 63% of K-3 students were reading at grade level. That number now, 89%.
This is systems change at its best, and it's not a sprint race, it's a marathon race.
Lehigh Valley Reads is a campaign powered by Lehigh Valley Public Media and United Way of the Greater Lehigh Valley to get all 3rd graders in the region reading at grade level by 2025. Director Angela Zanelli says Bangor's success is an example for the rest of the valley.
They're part of the community school network. They are a leader in Me School, and most importantly, they changed the way they were teaching their children how to read.
The spelling is oh, not E open syllable. That's a short E.
The district is part of a pilot program called ECRI. It stands for Enhancing Core Reading Instruction. There's an emphasis on repetition and intervention, helping students in small groups and individually to make sure they understand the content.
It's just making sure that we teach the kids routines that stick through all of the different things that they need to do so that we don't spend every day reteaching routines and that they're able to really focus in on what we want them to learn. Contraction. Good, contraction.
At 5 Points Elementary, students spend 2.5 hours on reading every day. Paraprofessionals and reading specialists support teachers in the classroom.
So it really is all hands on deck. Kids get up, they switch, and they go where their needs can best be met.
It's not just about these are my students, those are your students. We collectively own these students, we problem solve, we figure out what's going on with those students, and we make sure that they're succeeding in reading. This year, the school district brought together students from kindergarten to 2nd grade in the same building. It's a move that helps teachers and students get on the same page.
Having everyone together would allow us to sort of differentiate and target professional development, differentiate and target instruction, and make sure that all of our students were getting the exact same opportunities as they move through the grade levels.
Play, pen.
Teachers say they see the benefits of the district's initiative, better reading accuracy and fluency, as well as better behavior overall, promising signs for students as they go through school.
We're continuing with professional development and the upper levels as well. They need to know the science of reading. They need to make sure that they're identifying students that are still struggling. So it doesn't stop.
What we're involved in right now is really a starting point of an ongoing process that we hope is going to yield great things for the district.
I'm having emails and phone calls just saying, my child is reading, you know, and it's kind of like that light bulb turns on for them. And once they start that roller coaster of reading, they really, you know, they just kind of fly.
Soaring scores for students. The latest performance numbers show 73% in grades K to 3 are at the advanced literacy level. That's the most the district has ever seen. In Bangor, Northampton County, I'm Stephen Jewenmall, PBS 39 News Tonight.
Michelle.
They did make mention of our students that are at the advanced levels, and this is one of the benefits that we really started to notice this year, that it's beneficial for all learners. The numbers that are in blue on the chart are the actual blue zones from Bibbles, and those areas have a highest rate of students being able to be successful readers. You can see that we started tracking those blue zones in 2016. And as we went through, we noticed that there were students that the blue zones were getting greater. But as we added in ECRI, when you look at 2019, 2020, our student blue zones skyrocketed. We went from, in kindergarten, the year before, middle of the year, 82% to 91%. And comments from teachers were things like, oh my gosh, I can't believe in kindergarten, I have students reading CVC words. They're reading whole words. We're not sound by sound, we are reading words. Because even our strongest learners benefit from this as they excel while they're being taught in these methods.
And from an administrative perspective, what we know about this blue zone is that if you track your 3rd and 4th grade students and you look at your percentage of students at the end of the year that score in the blue zone, it is very comparable to the percentage of students that will score proficient on the PSSA, because they have the foundational skills necessary to be able to fluently read the complex text that's presented to them on the PSSA assessment. So that's kind of the long-term benefit of making sure that you get the highest percentage of kids into that blue zone. So just some final thoughts. So it is absolutely our moral responsibility on our system and on our schools that everyone leaves school after 11 years and 10,000 hours of instruction being able to read. And if you don't know how to teach kids how to read in 10,000 hours, then we need to find out. So we took the last 8 years to find that out and make sure that every single one of our teachers has the knowledge to do it and to do it well. And equity in education begins with good phonics instruction in the early grades, and it doesn't end there, but it begins there. So that's a quote from Emily Hanford, and it's certainly one that we believe holds true. And lastly, Steve Dykstra indicates that research shows that the single most powerful predictor of a children's ability to overcome trauma and survive their circumstances is the ability to read. And if they can read, they have a chance to find success. So we ask, we'll let you know out of the gate that this improvement journey has not been easy. It took a lot of commitment from a lot of people. And you're going to have to build a team around you to do that and to do it well. But the reward for students, and I would say even for our teachers, has been life-changing. So I challenge you to choose the complex but right path and not the simple but wrong path. Thank you.
Courtney, we have some questions in the group chat.
Okay.
Do you want me to, how should we do this? Should I read the questions out loud and then?
Sure, sounds good.
Okay, so this is from Lisa. It's, so do your tier 2 students get the preview of the ECRI lesson before the whole group lesson? If so, is it the same day as the teacher's whole group ECRI lesson, or is it the day before?
Heather, do you want to answer that?
So this would be flexible depending on what your students would need. So I know in my 1st grade classroom, I did have a group of students who received, we called it ECRI Light, and they would go with a paraprofessional in my situation, and she would deliver most of the routine. So there were times when we would cut a little bit of that out. That occurred in the opposite of their small group. So if we had 30 minutes of small group, they would receive their 15-minute small group with me, and then their other 15 minutes, rather than struggling through something independently, they would work with the paraprofessional to do what we would call ECRI Light. So in my case, yes, that was done prior to my lesson. So it would be a pre-teach. I know in some of the other grade levels, it might happen again. So if they received week 20, lesson 1, with the teacher in the morning, they might receive that again in the afternoon with, say, Lisa as the reading teacher, or whoever would be trained in the ECRI routines. We also would combine classes. So for a while, I was working with another teacher within first grade, and we would pull our most struggling kids. So these were our kids who were still not super fluent on their letter names, maybe our more kids who were leaning towards tier 3, and we would combine them so that they would get that pre-teach or taught again, depending on what they would need. But yes, a lot of times they would get that again sometime during the day.
Yeah, just to piggyback on that, if I could, Heather, exactly what she said. And that is something too, that when we spoke about schedule changes and adapting our schedules, that was something that we saw too as the year progressed, especially in second grade. We were seeing some stagnant results from some students. So we rearranged part of my morning so that I could do that pre-teach. And the way we kind of posed it to the children was, hey, you guys are going to be experts in this. We want you to be experts when you do this again later in the day. And they kind of were excited about it because they had that extra confidence boost. They had heard it already. They had seen it already. So then by the time they got to that core time in their classroom, they were responding on signal and they were accurate and automatic. So it really was a confidence boost for them as well. So it really did make a huge difference to have that opportunity to be able to use supports to support students in that prior to and pre-teach those routines in that lesson.
And this was our first year of full implementation within all classes. So myself and another teacher who had been trained back in 2018 started to implement in December of that year. So not every child that was in our second grade classes this year had had it previously. So whereas we might have seen more kids needing that double dip of ECRI, we're hoping that next year and in the years to come, it wouldn't be as necessary as it might have been this year.
Definitely.
Hey, another question. Would you like me to read another question?
Sure.
Okay. Is from M. Splain. Is ECRI a program to buy that has a scope and sequence for each component of the triangle? How expensive is the program?
I'll take that question. So it's not terribly expensive, but you do need to have one of the programs that it's aligned to. So it is not a standalone. I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, I suppose you could, but I wouldn't recommend it because it does pull the resources and the words right from Journeys. So the phonics skill is the scope and sequence that's from Journeys. And a lot of the words that are in there are your words to know, your sight words, and the words that the kids would be presented in their decodable reader that have the phonetic pattern. And then your connect to text, that piece that Heather was talking about, is your decodable reader right from that program. And like, for example, the words that we use for dictation, those are often the aligned spelling words that we don't even teach spelling the same way that we used to anymore. We don't send a list home and have kids study them. They study them through encoding every single day. So it's expensive in the fact that you do still need the core, but it's not that expensive to layer on top. So I would say you could layer it on top. I mean, in a building our size, we did it for well under $10,000, which in the grand scheme of the program, that's not much.
I find the routines are beneficial. So if you were to start anywhere, learning some of the routines, I know that in my training through Patan, there were many people from different IUs. So I feel like ECRI is going to become more standard than not within schools within Pennsylvania. So I would encourage you to check that out with your IU.
Right.
Hey, another one from Lori Vaughn. In your K-2 school, did you have staff turnover? If so, how did you handle that, being your K-2 teachers were so highly trained and skilled?
We don't have a high level of staff turnover, so I mean, I guess maybe we could say that they're super happy to work at Bangor and work for me. I'll take that, but we don't have a high level of turnover, but we do have some retirements and so forth, and we know that that's an issue. So that's part of the reason why we really wanted to get a letters trainer right on site so that we can do the letters training as we need them. And as we think even teachers need to hear it again, because it's a lot of content. So having our instructional coach along with that leadership team. So it does take a village. So for example, I had a teacher come back from maternity leave. She didn't get the ECRI training when we rolled it out. And she obviously with a new baby was not able to travel to Patan. So we had brought in a sub and had Heather go right into her classroom and do modeling and teaching right in the setting and help her begin to learn those routines kind of on the go and in a way that we could make work. So the district is supportive of doing that sort of stuff, but we really felt like that's why we try to embed as much as we can with the people that we have so that we have leaders on staff that can work with others.
Okay, I have two more. How did you get teachers who were old school teachers to buy into ECRI? From Ashley.
Well, I just don't think it's negotiable. So they are here to do a job, and the job that the district has outlined for them is that they are going to be expected to teach reading in a way that's aligned to the evidence in the research. And so my job is to make sure that that expectation is very clear, that expectation is reinforced. And I think most importantly, that you highlight the people that are doing it really, really well, because people want, success breeds success. And when they start to realize that their colleagues are getting all these accolades because the results are really good, well, you might want to start to try it a little bit more. So my job is just to make sure that people kind of know that in a supportive way, but yet at times firm, that it's just not negotiable because we have to make the goal.
I think the peer coaching really helped some of our teachers who were struggling. I can't think of anyone really within our school who said, dug their heels in and said they weren't going to try these routines. They knew, they trusted our opinion. But I think having just another teacher go in rather than having Dr. Lepore go in as more of a, authoritative figure and to say, come on, we can do this. Come and really have them come into our classrooms and watch us do it rather than, make it more evaluative. I think that really helped with some of our teachers who were just kind of stuck in their ways.
I think too, as teachers started to see results, it just spiraled. I remember a teacher coming running down the hall. She's like, oh my goodness, ECRI did this. And Dr. Lepore was like, no, you did it. ECRI helped. It was a way to get you to, deliver it a little bit more in a solidified way. But teachers saw results, and they saw results they'd never seen before. And once you see that, you can't argue it at all. So that was a huge thing that I saw.
Ladies, thank you so much. I know there were a couple more questions. I don't know if you want to stay on to answer those, or because I'm happy to leave, to stay here with you, or if you want to just give people your email address. How would you like to handle that?
We can stay and answer them quickly if you would like.
Sure. Okay.
There was another one that said, do you find this supports English learners?
We don't have a large, go ahead, Dr. Lepore.
We don't have a huge population of English language learners, but we did have a few students that came in absolutely non-English speaking this year. And the gains that those students were able to make were unbelievable. And not to say that they wouldn't have made those gains previously, but the rate of improvement was very remarkable. So I have to surmise that it does have something to do with it, because it just very explicitly teaches them all the sounds and words, and the vocabulary piece alone is going to enhance the way that they understand English words, because it's so explicit.
I hope you ladies are seeing all of the feedback in the chat box. Your session is really very, people love it.
Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't see any other questions, just these awesome comments.
I do see a question about if your district is open to people visiting and observing.
Absolutely, we have people in all the time. So just reach out to me and we'll gladly schedule a visit.
Okay, well, if that's it, then thank you ladies so much. Your district is doing amazing things. We would all be so lucky to have our kids in your district. Thank you